All right, so we are live now, Breanne. So just a quick introduction. I am Kimberly Benyon. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I am a local Forbes rep in Florida. Today I'm presenting with Breanne, and I'll let her introduce herself real quick as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Breanne Bockwoldt. I'm also a speech language pathologist, and I am the assistive technology specialist located in Colorado.
Neat. So we're going to get started, and our topic today is talking about the power of play. Before we jump into that, of course, some little housekeeping and disclosures. So we are both paid employees of Forbes AAC and members of ASHA. And while we will be showing a lot of content as it relates to our products at Forbes, keep in mind that there are other applications and things for what we will be talking about. So while it is specific to the products that we sell, if you're using another product or you're working with an end user that has something similar, has similar capabilities, a lot of the things will translate over as well. So real quickly, the learning outcomes that we're hoping that you can walk away from this session knowing is that we want you to be able to identify the importance of play for language development, especially for our AAC users. It's really important. We want to be able to identify ways AAC users with limited motor abilities can control toys within their environment for interactive language development. Be able to demonstrate the ability to integrate play strategies for language development in AAC with the use of remote control toys, as well as some other interactive learning games, and justify the importance of advocating for access to play for individuals of all motor abilities who utilize AAC. Quick history about Forbes. So Forbes was actually started back in 1987, and primarily their focus was on access and key guards, and then it's kind of evolved since that point. And so we've spent a lot more time looking at development, design, and manufacturing, and we continue to grow as a company in the AAC field. So in 2017, we had a division that's dedicated strictly to AAC and bringing a lot of really innovative products to market. So Forbes was one of the first companies to bring the iPad to market as a dedicated medical device and billable through insurance. So we have quite a history in AAC, even though we may be one of the smaller companies out there. So we're really excited to be partnered with CoughdRop now to offer a lot of different communication solutions to our end users. And I know over in the lobby and in the chat, there's the AAC Now. So quick little plug, and then I promise I'll move off my Forbes soapbox here. But we have a really exciting partnership with CoughdRop now. So we're offering all of the clinician software, so they're able to download a clinician copy of CoughdRop, as well as get their communicators connected with free trial software. So that's there, so make sure you check that out as well. Sorry for the sales pitch, just wanted to make sure to throw it in there. It's a really cool program. With that aside, today we're really going to focus on our WinSleep series. So our WinSleep products are all going to be Windows-based, and these are really unique in the fact that they can adapt to a lot of different access methods. So not only direct touch and eye gaze, which are the two that most people jump to, but everything in between. So gyroscopic head mouse, you can use switch scanning, lots of different switch options, Bluetooth switches, as well as wired switches. So tons of flexibility within the WinSleep. And I'm really excited that we just brought back our WinSleep for kids, which is going to be our focus as we talk about language development and play during the session. So WinSleep for Kids is going to offer a lot of unique features in terms of interactive learning games and our infrared toys, which are already integrated not only into the programming, but also with core word pages to correspond. So not only do you have access to the toys, but access to the language to talk about the toys and the activities that the kiddos are engaging in. So this will be our focus for this presentation and how we can use the WinSleep to facilitate play and language development. Spark is the software, and I went ahead and dropped that as well in the chat for this group. So if you guys want to download a trial of Spark, you can do that onto your desktop, and that will allow you to check out our core word as well as our infrared toys and our interactive learning games. So that is in the chat group. Another unique feature is the sound pod that's highlighted here. So this is something that is special to Forbes. And when we're talking about play and we're talking about communicative functions and things, keep in mind, where is the voice coming from? So the sound pod was designed with the end user in mind. So they can wear it on the lanyard that you see there, and then it will project their voice from themselves. So instead of drawing more attention to the device, it directs the communication partner's attention to the actual communicator. So it's a really cool feature of our products that we wanted to highlight.
Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and talk about play and how it relates to overall language development. So we know that children learn language through natural and motivating opportunities. And what's a more natural opportunity than play, right? Play is exactly how a child explores their environment and builds their knowledge of the world around them. So studies have found that opportunities for play translate into all the important areas of development, including a child's cognitive, emotional, physical, and their social development. So play is an essential and natural way for children to build their skills across that developmental spectrum. So not only is language impacted by play, but these interrelated areas feed into a comprehensive picture of a child's overall abilities over time. So play invites opportunities for children to problem solve, to use their imaginations and their creativity, and to experience enjoyment of the world around them. And we know for those children with complex communication needs, including those children who might have fine or gross motor differences or difficulties, it can be hard for them to explore the world around them and play in a more conventional way, or experience those language opportunities through play in the same way that typically developing children might be able to. So thinking about that, we have to be creative in how we create language opportunities for these kinds of children, and think about how we can engage them in play and facilitate those crucial language opportunities. So first, we're going to start with a little activity. So I want you to look at this visual of the different communication functions and think about, if you could only choose one communication function for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? So you can only speak in that one function. So if you choose requesting, you can only say I want or I need. If you protest, you can only say no all the time. Maybe you would like that. So I'll give you a few seconds to drop the answer in the chat. And Kim, could you throw out some popular ones that come up?
Absolutely. I know for me personally, I went ahead and put seek information. I know I definitely be wanting to get more information, what's going on in my environment. Let's see what everybody else is thinking.
So you're nosy.
I am very nosy.
Yeah.
I want to know everything. Give me the tea. Although social routines are important too.
Mm-hmm. I feel like social routines and maintaining conversation are almost cheating because you get a couple different exchanges out of that.
That is true. Let's see. All right. Deborah says maintain conversation from Sherry. Ooh, requesting food from Christine. I feel like especially as it's getting later in the day.
Same.
Says protest. I like my space. Go.
These are great.
Yes, definitely. It's interesting we haven't gotten any requesting though.
Just food. Only when it involves food.
Just food. I don't even count that as a requesting. I feel like that's a mandatory, right?
I demand food. I don't request it. Okay. So the point of this is to say that this is a hard choice, right? It's really limiting to only stick to one communication function because we communicate for so many other purposes other than just requesting. And when we're first starting out AAC, what do we tend to teach? Requesting, because it's motivating. It's important for our users to be able to get their wants and needs met, but we need to be really careful not to get caught in the trap of only focusing on that, because language is so much more robust. And you can see how that could be really, really limiting to only teach them that one way of communicating. So our AAC users, and I love this graphic, need access to colorful language. So relating it to play instead of focusing on, I want the ball or I want music. We can expand that to describe what the toy is doing. Say that we don't like what we're playing with, that we want to do something different. Ask a question about the toy. Direct what we want the toy to do, right? Boss people around and tell them what we want next. Requesting is just that jumping off point for other teaching and modeling that's really important for that language development. So giving access to a wide range of vocabulary and language allows those AAC users the opportunity to communicate so much more in these words, and more importantly, having this variety of language available during play is going to open up a world of experience and development for that AAC user. Awesome. So linking back language development in AAC, we can think about all that happens in the first 3 years of language development and how amazing that growth is. So by the time typically developing children are in preschool, they understand and use thousands of words and a variety of different sentence types. But in contrast to that, many of our AAC users have challenges that impact the typical amount of language that they are developing. And we know that, right? And these children and caregivers benefit most when there's early intervention, so beginning early, to provide support and most importantly, empowerment in beginning to use that AAC and bolster the development and close that developmental gap in language. So research has consistently shown that the earlier AAC is introduced, the greater the potential for improving those language outcomes. So then the question becomes, how can we introduce AAC earlier and make it engaging and also motivating and meaningful for those really early users? And we can do that through play. So children learn from interactions with their peers and through independent play. But children with disabilities are going to struggle to engage with typical play and require the use of adapted toys. But to summarize all of that, our users with complex communication needs are often excluded from the opportunity to play with those motivating toys and activities that their typically developing peers are often privileged to. The research has found that the benefits of play and therapy are the most effective psychosocial tools to increase that motivation to learn novel language. So the key points are to aim to develop language early through natural play and provide as many of those opportunities as much as possible. So a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different frequency, or a lot more frequency over time. All right, some challenges that we have to providing play opportunities to our AAC users. First of all, how do we provide complex communicators access to the same kind of language their peers enjoy? How can we facilitate play and provide access to robust language at the same time for those communicators? So not only do they need to be able to play, but also they need to be able to use that colorful language to be able to talk about what they're doing. Another challenge is identifying the characteristics of the beginning communicators and matching their needs to the kind of AAC technology that they need. So this is where we're going to talk about feature matching, not only the child's access needs. So like Kim mentioned with the WinSlate, you have those different ways that you can access the device through eye gaze, maybe it's switch scanning, maybe it's a gyro head mouse, but then also choosing a language software and a language system that's going to make communicating for play as easy and as efficient as possible for that child. And finally, another challenge is reducing the learning demands of the AAC system. So I've talked a little bit about choosing a language system and being able to have access to all of those different language functions to talk about our play. But it's also important to have play as a means of exploration without having that cognitive component and having that demand of having to use the language, and just having the freedom to explore on your own and independently. When we're talking about the barriers to play for language development, we have 5 different areas that we can consider for that. So the first is motor abilities, of course. So a typical child may be able to sit on the ground and play with a toy car, but a child using a wheelchair, a child with different motor differences, they're not going to have access to that movement. So how do we account for that and make that play possible? Related to that would be positioning. So a child with complex communication needs to be able to have access to toys that where they're in the position that feels best for their body. So it's too demanding to expect a child to coordinate their motor movements to try to play, while also expecting them to enjoy the experience and learn language at the same time. And like I mentioned, just be able to have that exploration time. Next would be family understanding. So AAC systems can be very overwhelming when they're first introduced to families. Play is a really natural opportunity in getting familiar with the device, and an easy way to have the family engage the AAC user without it being too intimidating. So that can involve the whole family. Financial burdens. And I'm sure you've seen adapted toys can be really expensive and really inaccessible. Like I've seen toys upwards of, $100+ just for one toy. And this limits the variety of toys that a child can use, and it's restrictive. And it doesn't allow the child to experience different interests if they're limited to just those really expensive, already adapted toys. And then how expensive these toys are leads to getting accessible toys being very time consuming. Like if you're someone who's a go-getter and you're like, I'm going to go adapt all of these toys for my user, that's going to take up your time. And you're going to take time programming the device, and it's going to take that time away from getting to use the device with the child and having them learn and experience. And now that we've discussed some barriers to play, let's move on to what solutions we have for play and language development.
Absolutely. So I think it's so important that we highlight and acknowledge some of those challenges and barriers that our end users face, but at the same time, spend a little bit more time discussing solutions and ways we can accommodate our end users where they're at. And so we're going to kind of go through that list that Breanne shared, and then also match, like she said, some solutions based on where our end users' needs are. So motor abilities, we want to make sure that we're providing toys and access to toys that can be controllable utilizing the access method appropriate for the child. So that could be direct touch with a key guard. It could be a simple switch access. It could be that we're using the head mouse. I know lately I've been doing a lot of auditory switch scanning for a lot of kiddos in schools. So we want to make sure that whatever they're comfortable using for their communication system, that they're also able to control their environment with the same toys. Positioning, I know Breanne touched on this, and I think this is so important. How many times have we all sat in a really uncomfortable chair, or we've sat still for too long, or we get the wiggles, right? Same thing for our end users when we're talking about these communicators, right? We want to make sure that they're in a very comfortable position that optimizes their ability to access the toys and be able to engage and play. That is a way that really is encouraging to them, and that they're comfortable and that they want to play. If I'm uncomfortable, then I'm not going to want to engage. I'm not going to want to continue that activity, right? I might have the wiggles. I might not be able to get where I need to be to actually access the device, which can be a difficult thing. So you can see in this photo, a little unconventional on the angle, but that's where that kiddo needs the device to be placed. for access. And so there's lots of different mounting solutions and creative ways to position the device. And like I said, with the WinSlate, you have a lot of different access options. We want to make sure that we're really optimizing their position while engaging in play to make sure it's a successful session. So Breanne also touched on this, right? Family understanding, we get play. Play makes sense, right, to most of us that have kids, and it's what we start doing. And not only to us as parents or as clinicians, if you think about it in terms of siblings, cousins, peers, people coming into play, they get it, right? That makes sense. So if I'm playing with toys that make sense to you, then we can engage in that social component. Is so important when we're talking about language development and motivation, right? And think about the empowerment that that brings to that kiddo. And so I actually just did a WinSlate sit up this morning with a 7-year-old, and the instant that she had access to Fart Monster and could tease her brother, and you were like, oh, Jamie, like what did you just do? And of course the giggles. And it was amazing. So to have a way to interact and play, just like your other, kiddos would. So they might have a whoopee cushion, right, and throw it under the chair. Now Jamie instead is going to hit the button on her Fart Monster and be able to make the same jokes with her brother. So kids get it and caregivers get it. And we want everyone to feel empowered and successful through the play. And really quick, jumping into positioning again, yes, community vision AT lab for sure. Work with an OT positioning is important. Definitely reach out to your OTs and your PTs, especially if you're struggling. I know as a clinician, that was something that I relied on heavily, especially with my pediatric kiddos, was bringing them into sessions and making sure that we had the support that they needed. And it could have been as simple as adjusting a lateral support in their chair, but those are things that are really important and as an AT and AAC team that we want to consider. So that was a great point. And I know we talked about the financial burden. I used to work at our Tech Act program, and I can tell you, we started a toy lending library just for this purpose because the adapted toys had gotten so expensive and it was so difficult for families to acquire. But just like our typically developing kids, right, we get a toy, we play with it, a week later, it's like, next, right? So we want to make sure that we have toys that are not only accessible, but affordable and openly available. And so we'll go through some of these a little bit later on, but on our website, we have 7 different toys that are available through Amazon. And I believe the price point for all of them is $40 or less. And I know we're constantly as a team doing our little fun research and looking at different toys that can integrate within our system. But these 7 that are listed on our website are fully integrated within our WinSlate for Kids system. Time consuming, this is always the big one, right? I have to learn where the vocabulary is. I have to figure out what kind of activity I can do within. I need to program all of the codes. And so we tried to make that as simple as possible, not only for clinicians, but for parents. So it's kind of just to open the box and get going. So within our core word system, we have not only the IR commands for the toys, but we also have the vocabulary to talk about it. And I know Breanne will get into that a little bit more, but I think it's important when we think about those communicative functions. Not only do we want to be able to request the toy, but then right when we're playing, we talk about what the toys are doing. It's going fast. I want it to crash. I want to do more. I want to stop. So there's lots of different things that we comment during play. And that's a great opportunity to build language. So we need to make sure that we're not only providing access to the toys, but also access to the language that can do that. Another cool tool that we'll talk a little bit more about is this interactive language development kit. And it is a whole protocol that pairs with our device and the toy. So we'll jump in and show you some examples of that shortly. Some additional ways that you can support play and language development through play, right? Redesigning AAC systems to better reflect what we know about language development. And I know we'll show that through our core word and being able to look at what does the language stage look like for development and how can we match that and what vocabulary we're providing our end users. Exploring the use of AAC means of communication with young children. So starting out young, I know Breanne talked about like that birth to 3, right? That's so critical for language learning and exposure. So definitely starting early is best and giving that opportunity. Providing external teaching, using familiar context and event scenarios. And this is so important with play. And I think this is where it makes most sense. And we'll show examples of this within the language development kit protocol, but these are things that we do, right? They get familiar. So even if I'm thinking about my end user that's, CP that's there in a chair, but they're watching their sibling get on the floor and play or move cars or play with robots. So there's a familiarity that's already there for them. So we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on that. And then increasing the frequency and value of play opportunities. So if we make sure that we're having access to the toys we can control, we have awesome positioning because we worked with our team, right, to establish that we're comfortable, then we can start kind of growing our vocabulary and we're going to be more participatory. So then I can do that more frequently. And it's going to be a more enjoyable experience, not only for the communicator, but also for the family. So the language development kit, we keep talking about this. Again, this is on our website. I can drop the link in a minute. And this comes with 7 interactive toys. So the wizard wall car, which is that red car, it suctions to the wall with a vacuum and it'll spin around and you can move it up and down. It's a lot of fun. I will say at conferences, we all have a good time with it. It seems to draw a lot of attention when we run it on the walls. Then we have the pet unicorn. Yes, I will add that link, Deborah. The unicorn is a lot of fun. She likes to dance and go a little crazy. Then there's the puppy that's a lot of fun as well. Oh, I skipped over the Triceratops. He does roar. There are 2 different robots and one I know loves to dance more than the other one. And then the Zoom tubes, that one I think that one's a great one for siblings or for peers. They can help build the tubes. And then there's a tiny little car that goes inside the tubes. And so the communicator can control the car within the tube set. So all of these are available, like I said, on Amazon, or we can bundle them. I know at least in the state of Florida, we can add this on as an accessory. I know it varies state to state, so you'll have to work with your local rep, but my little girl this morning was able to get one of these funded with her device as an accessory. So definitely a cool thing to add on if you can.
Oh, wait, don't forget the robots.
Yes, we have the robots. So I know this is my personal favorite robot. I won't turn him on because he gets really loud and sometimes they're a little needy.
Yeah, he's like spicy.
Yes, they like to dance and they like to sing, and they're very engaging and motivating for kids. And I think too, a big part of what we do at Forbes is we want to make things accessible and we want things to look as consumer grade as possible, right? And so we don't want to be drawing more attention like, oh, it's an adapted toy, or I'm using an iPad versus like a thicker device or a heavier device. Most of my kids in my class have an iPad, I have an iPad, and that's my talker, right? Or with our Win Slate that we're able to use this Surface Pro tablet as our base. So everything looks very high tech and consumer grade versus drawing more attention. The same thing with the toys. So the toys give us an opportunity to not only have toys that are consumer grade and are familiar, not only to end users, but also to their peers. So the language development kit, and this is where me as a speech therapist, I start to geek out a little bit. I think this is such an amazing resource. So within here, there's a whole clinical protocol, and this was developed by speech language pathologists who specialize in AAC. And it really provides you a systematic approach for language acquisition during play while using AAC. So the protocols include lesson plans, goal banks, and data tracking sheets. So we're going to give you a quick little snippet of that. And I know I posted in the chat as well. There's a link to some of our resources. So there's a sample version of this that's available for download on our website as well. So Breanne, if you want to open that, we can kind of just peek through it. So this is what it looks like. So this comes in a nice binder with all of the toys when it's added on. And it starts off talking about the 4 different areas of communicative competence. So looking at our areas, right? So we have social, it's like, I guess I'm skipping ahead, but I think it's for goals. The goal bank is like,
okay, yeah.
I was like, wait, what is it? Yeah. So this is broken down first by toy. And I love this because it's so nice. So what car, or I'm going to put the wall card, that's going to be our first one. This parents can just pick up and use, right? So what are we going to do? How do we want to target? And then going back to Breanne's fun activity. So what communicative functions can I target? What things can I do? And so here I'm going to break it down, and I have my core vocabulary targets, my fringe vocabulary targets. Then I can look at all of my different functions. And so even gives you example words and phrases. So again, so for mom or dad sitting down and I want to model, but I'm not sure what I want to do. Again, all of this is here for them. So it makes it really easy and user friendly and saves them a lot of time. So there are one of these activity plans for each of the different toys. So the dinosaur, the robots, puppies and unicorn, the Zoom tubes. And then here's the goal bank that I was talking about earlier. And so you have your linguistic, operational, social, and strategic. And so it's grouped all of your goals. And so for each section, you have both your long-term goals and your short-term goals. And again, as a clinician, this just makes life so much easier. You can just kind of copy and paste or get an idea of where you want to be with your kiddo. And then in addition to your goal bank, you're going to get data tracking sheets in the back. So it's, again, a really quick, easy way that you can kind of go in and kind of know what your goal areas are, what you're working on, what kind of cues are you using, and then take your data that way. So it's a really nice protocol system that matches with the toys, gives everybody kind of a game plan and keeps everyone on the same page. So highly, highly, highly recommend it. And again, there's a sample on our website. So I will repost those as well so that you guys can have access to those. Then the language that's available to me is amazing. So it's built out in our core word. So when you go into your toys, you're going to also have your core word. And I know Breanne is going to go into that a little bit more in detail, but everything is already programmed with specific commands and activity-specific vocabulary. And so that vocabulary will match up to the clinical protocol. But you can see on this one, it has the dinosaur, and then you're going to get vocabulary that's specific to that one. I guess I picked a different one that's forward. So usually when you say talk about it, then you'll have things like roar, go forward, go backwards, stop, something else. So within each of the page sets, they're built out. So with the unicorn with her fun long locks, she might have dance and pretty or brush hair. So all of that vocabulary is going to be specific to that activity. So you can see in the corner where it says talk about it, every time I click talk about it, it will change the fringe vocabulary to match whatever the activity is or toy that I picked. So benefits of using these IR controlled toys: independent control of your environment, independent exploration of environment. Did I say independent? This is like the most exciting thing for these kids. Like the second that they're able to have control over their environment, you see a totally different side of the kiddos come out. And even, like I said, the one from this morning, the second she could start playing with her own toys, she told her siblings they were hers. And then she told them to go outside. which I thought was hilarious, so she could play with them. It creates such a motivating experience and so many natural language opportunities when we think about it, right? And they're running the wall car up the wall and it's going fast or they're going to crash and all of that. And then, oh, they're asking, does the motor plan change? So it is the same. So your French vocabulary is in the same location, and then your core word layout is in the same. So that stays exactly the same. It is just those fringe words that are going to change out. So yes, consistent for motor planning. And then the social engagement is amazing. Again, I think more about peers. And even with the puppy and the unicorn, I'll show you the little remotes that come with them. They're so small, like so small. And then they have these little treats that you can give them. But I also think about it from a peer perspective. So if I'm controlling the unicorn from my device, but if I have a sister that wants to play with me, then she can give the unicorn a little treat and she'll do something as well. So it creates an environment where we can actually play together instead of having, these are my toys and those are your toys. So it creates more of a social engagement and a bond, which is really nice to be able to give a family. So this is just a quick video of how the device interacts with the unicorn. I said she's a little feisty. She likes to dance a lot. And she plays music. And so you can make her go and stop, sit, all of these things you see on your screen. And then again, with your core vocabulary is going to match her. And so lots
really going for it.
Thanks, Kim, for posting the link there for that LDK. Yeah, if you hear us say LDK, sorry, language development kit. But that's what that is. So I'm gonna let Breanne talk a little bit more about the core words specifically. And I think for Community Vision AT Lab, that'll help kind of make sense. And then we'll show you some within the software where you can really get an idea of how it's laid out.
Yeah, so now we're going to go into a couple demonstrations that'll hopefully bring together everything that we've been talking about between playing with the toys, having access to the vocabulary to give the toys action, to talk about them, and then how that relates back to the language system itself. So this is the core word language system that I'll show you, and it's designed to promote that language development. So it has a Fitzgerald color coding system and consistent cell locations to promote that motor planning piece, which, as we know, is super important for our users who are doing alternative access like eye gaze or switch access. It's really important to keep all of those things in a similar place. And you'll see that consistency too when I show you between the different vocabulary sizes that are available. And then each level is based on Brown stages of language development. So we have a core word 6, which supports early communication, and that's based on Brown stage 1. Core word 20 increases in complexity, and that's Brown stages 1 through 4. And then core word 40 you can use at all levels of Brown stages 1 to 5. And then we are working on a core word 60 right now to have that more expanded language option, which is really exciting. And then just to mention too, like Kim was talking about, we're promoting AAC now, and if you're a clinician, that you can get a free full license of Cough Drop. And that's really cool because if you see this core word system and you want to try it out, this is also available not only on the WIN site, but also within Cough Drop. So you can put it on your ProSlate device as well, or an iPad. So that's really exciting for you to be able to try out and take away from this presentation. So I'm going to hop into Spark and give you a little demonstration of what we've been discussing. So this is everything that's available in the software. We don't have time to get into all the different things. This first row is really geared towards adults and text-based users. The second row is where your language software is going to live. And then this last row down here is going to be those interactive learning activities and those play opportunities that we've been talking about. And you can see there's multiple folders of different good stuff to be able to do that. So first going into the infrared toy page sets. These are just separate from the core word, but I'll show you how that all links together in a little bit. Let's go with the puppy. I like her. So you can see if you click on this, here are the different actions that you can make the puppy do. So we can have her step forward, slide, run. She's really similar to the video of the unicorn that was like dancing around and going crazy. So this one's a pretty popular fan favorite. But then like Kim was talking about, if we click on talk about it, here's our core vocabulary and here's some language related to us playing with that toy. So she's dancing, she's sitting, she's pretty. Okay, now I want
something different.
Do something different. And that's when we can honor that and go back out and maybe choose a different toy. So that's available within each of these toy page sets. All of that is customized with the actions that the toys do, and then have that talk about it page that's special to that specific toy. And we were talking about the motor planning piece, and is everything in the same place? And yes, it is. So you have those core words that stay the same, and then those few descriptive words that are going to be special to that particular toy. I go back out to the portal here and go into our core word language sets. Core word 6, you have these nice large symbols for our early communicators. And if I go into Let's play and our toys, I can find the infrared toys, and then we can make a choice of what we want to play with. And that's how I can get back into that page set to be able to play with my puppy and then talk about it. And moving up to core word 20, you can see that the color coding stays the same. You have that yellow for pronouns and green for verbs. And I can, again, go into play and go to my toys and say that I want to play with my learning development kit over here. And one more. Oh, I also like to mention, so in the page sets for the toys, you have that talk about it. But if you're not playing with the toys and you're just in that vocabulary, what I really like about our core word is that you have this chat button that always lives in the upper left-hand corner, so you have access to some really nice social phrases, which I think is really important to have always available. And last, core word 40. Right now, this is our most robust page set, but like I said, we're working on a core word 60. And again, it accounts for that consistent color coding, consistent location of everything, and we can still get into our toys from here. All right. So that's just a little demonstration of core word. And again, you can find these in Cough Drop now as well. And then something else that I want to touch on that's available with WinSlate for Kids, and that's pretty recent, is these WinSlate for Kids interactive learning activities. So these are 21 games that are available for progressive eye gaze training. So if you have a user who's just beginning on eye gaze, we don't want to throw them immediately onto their vocabulary and put that language component on them. And cognitively, that's just going to be a lot. We want to give them the ability to explore with their eyes and learn that their eyes are making something happen on the screen, and then give them the opportunity to independently play too. So these games just allow that user to develop a sense of agency around using their device and engage in that independent play without that cognitive demand of language learning. So it's just let them explore. And something that's really cool is that it's also really highly customizable to the needs of the user. And you can change things like the difficulty level of the games, the background color. Like if you have a user with visual impairment and you want to make a black background to make that more high contrast, you're able to do that. And we mentioned collaborating with PT and OT, but I also want to mention that Collaborating with your teacher with visual impairment and understanding your users' visual needs can also be really important when you're setting up for alternative access and using the WinSlate. But I'll show you a little bit of this as well. If we go back into our Spark portal, and again, this is all linked in forward, but this is going to be specific to the WinSlate because it's eye gaze accessible, right? And so we want to play and go to our WinSlate for Kids games. And you can see that you can make multiple user profiles. So this would be important, like if you're trialing with multiple AAC users and you want a different profile for each of them, you're able to do that. But if I go into my profile, you can see that all of the games are divided up on different skill levels. So when I'm first starting out, maybe we're just focusing on a non-moving object and we're exploring doing cause and effect. I like playing with Happy Sun. So I have it customized to be very easy, and it's got that black background for a lot of contrast. And if I scroll over him, he blows a bubble and does something fun. So it allows that eye gaze user to be able to play and explore on their own. And if I go into my settings, I can make it a little bit harder. I can change what the cursor looks like. I can turn some music on if that helps get the user's attention, and also change that background color. And within this, you can customize those settings in each of these different skill areas. So then we start looking at, okay, I can look at something that's not moving. Can I start looking at things that are moving across the screen and target that way, like these fish? Or can I use my eyes to look at something for a certain period of time, and teaching that ability to sustain eye gaze, or following my gaze around the screen and being able to track items. And all of these are going to be really fun and engaging and very low pressure, but ultimately translate to that AAC user's ability to use their communication and use the vocabulary on their device, because they're learning to use their eyes and sustain their attention. So just wanted to mention this too as a way for our users to independently play and experience that learning just on their own. Back out of here.
All right, so in wrapping up, I'm hoping that we provided you with several different solutions to kind of get your kiddos involved more in play and provide them opportunities not only to engage in play, but to develop language and to have access to those toys and things and games like Breanne was just showing you within the devices. So those are things we want to do. The language development kit is certainly one way to do that. In the chat, I did drop, I dropped a lot of things. Sorry guys to overwhelm you. I did put in the protocol preview is there. So there's 6 pages of that. There's a link to register for cough drop. Kim also dropped in the language development kit as well. There's the Spark links if you wanted the software. So I know that was kind of like a lot at once. And then Karen did ask about donors choose for the language development kit. And I have not used that, but I don't see why. I would think that would be a solid option. I know some of my families will do the toys for birthdays or holidays, and they just slowly start acquiring additional toys. My kiddo this morning was super pumped to be able to control the TV and change the channel on her dad. So that was another fun one. But I think the more opportunities we give kids to be independent and be able to control their environment while growing their language is super important. So I don't know if you guys have additional questions, if you want to start putting them in the chat as we start to wrap up, and we'll come back around to your questions. These are just a couple of the testimonials that we have received back about the language development kits. I love them. They're so wonderful. I'm working on a few pages to make modifications for different levels. and to be more visually supportive for our CVI population. For example, using the pink dog page, we created a duplicate page set with fewer buttons, added high contrast background, etc. We also modified the talk pages to use some of the fun phrases for play and recorded speech on a few of the buttons. I thought I would fill you in on how we were using it. I know you have SLPs working on those pages. They might be interested in how these were being used in treatment. And I will say, I know Katie, I know she's been popping into different sessions. She's also, in addition to working on the Forward 60, she's also working on a high contrast set as well. So we definitely, I think being a smaller company gives us the opportunity to take your feedback. So we're happy always to hear your feedback and start creating more custom pages. And I will say that's one of the nice things about this language system is that it is highly customizable. So it gives you a really good solid foundation. And then if you need to go in and make those accommodations or changes, it's something that you can do fairly quickly or easily on your own platforms, which is nice. Here's another one. So I had to share a very cool story with you. We saw a teen yesterday working on access. She'd been showing one or two intentional movements. And in 1 hour session yesterday, we got the Robo Pet toys out and she had over 80 activations on the switch in our hour session. So I wanted to thank you so much for the toys, programming, and page sets, an opportunity. And I think something Breanne and I both wanted to talk about, and I think is so important, is through play, a lot of times you can start to remove some of the demand of communicating, right? It happens more naturally. I'm not asking you to hit buttons. I'm not asking questions and wanting answers or having you make requests, right? It's just kind of that natural flow that happens. And I think a lot of the games that Breanne was showing, as well as the engagement with the toy, is remove that for a second. So there's not as much cognitive load on the communication aspect. That can come second, but I'm going to engage and play with this toy and have a good time. And then it loops them back into the language component naturally. So I know personally, I've seen this happen a lot in different sessions, especially if you have a kiddo with access difficulties. And if they've been through the rigmarole of trying a million different systems or different points of access, sometimes they're a little frustrated and overwhelmed at that point. So kind of switching gears and mixing it up and going the play route gives them an opportunity to be successful. And two, with Breanne pointing out like the sunshine, right? Then you're able to show that one object, right? And we can have success and then we can scale it up and continue to create success. So just things to think about as you're going through and setting up your users for success. So definitely connect with us. I know a bunch of us are moderating different sessions, so feel free to pop in. Like I said, there is that AAC Now channel if you guys want to pop in there. I know Katie, myself, will be going through that and be around to answer your questions. If you want to reach out specifically to me or Breanne, here's our email and contact information. Let me see if there's any more questions. Let's see. Okay, so Donors Choose was brought up as a potential funding source to get an LDK or the language development kit. I have not personally used that, but definitely something I would try. I'm in Ohio. Yeah, so they're using it in Ohio. I know, like a lot. Like I said, in Florida, we're very fortunate. I know Colorado, you're kind of limited, Breanne, on what you're able to get.
Yeah, it's going to depend on insurance, so. Yeah,
so lots of different options and funding options. And then, like I said, we're always able to kind of go back and help kind of accumulate the toys, different holidays and things. Luckily, the price point makes it attainable for most families. Let's see. Any other questions or things we didn't touch on that you guys wanted to see? Awesome. Well, thanks guys for spending your afternoon. I know at least here on the East Coast, right? It's 4 to 5. It's that fun, bewitching hour where we start to kind of wind down. So appreciate you guys spending time with us, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you, everybody.